Qantas, Jetstar and Virgin dominate the Australian skies today, but did you know about these other ones that used to exist? Most people would know about Ansett and TAA, but did you know about Australian National Airways? To start off with, let's start with the most well-known, Ansett. Ansett was founded in 1935 by Sir Reginald Ansett. He originally had a freight carrying business, but it became a little too successful, so the Victorian state government outlawed private freight carrying businesses. So Reg created Ansett. This way the state government couldn't interfere with it because aviation was overseen by the federal government. On the 17th of February 1936, it held its first flight between Hamilton and Melbourne. During World War II, it suspended its flights and helped service the US Army Air Forces. After the war, they successfully fought to re-establish their domestic routes. Reg Ansett made it very clear he didn't want competition, so he bought a bunch of airlines. He bought Guinea Airways, which operated in South Australia in 1959, and renamed it Airlines of South Australia. He bought New South Wales-based Butler Air Transport and renamed it Airlines of New South Wales. He also bought WA-based Mac Robertson Miller Airlines. He later ended up losing control of the company to News Corp of all things and TNT. In the 80s, they bought Newman's Air, a New Zealand air carrier, and renamed it Ansett New Zealand. And this time, the government also deregulated the industry and opened up Ansett to competition for the first time. They also bought another airline, East West Airlines, which operated between regional cities and managed to skirt around regulations by operating out of smaller airports. In the 90s, Ansett adopted the insignia we came to recognise. All the regional branding was dropped in favour of the Southern Cross style theme. They also expanded into international flights for the first time. On the 11th of September 1993, they had their first flight to Bali. In the lead up to the Sydney Olympics, they took on the role of the official airline for the event. In hindsight, this seemed unwise. They had more routes added as part of their campaign and had the Sydney Olympics insignia branded onto the planes. It was expected to increase more traffic, but it did not do so. This is where we discuss its collapse. In the 90s, Air New Zealand bought TNT's stake in Ansett for 475 million Australian dollars in 1996, with them eventually acquiring the whole thing in 2000 for 680 million Australian dollars. Because of this, in order to prevent creating a monopoly, they had to divest from Ansett New Zealand. Air New Zealand began cost-cutting measures which did not help the company at all. Granted in Christmas 2000 and fully granted in Easter 2001.
Tonight, Ansett agrees to buy new planes as it tries to find a way through its safety crisis.
The Ansett boss arrived to repair his airline's damaged reputation and strike back at the aviation bureaucrats who grounded 10 of Ansett's jets.
Oh, look, I think the major issue is the damage to our reputation created by this reaction by CASA.
The Civil Aviation Safety Authority is making no apologies.
Day to day, flight to flight, it is Ansett that have to guarantee the safety of their passengers.
CASA technicians are waiting on more paperwork from Ansett before they start their inspections of the troubled Boeing 767s in hangars in Melbourne. That's dashed Ansett's hopes of having the first of the suspect jets cleared and flying this evening or tomorrow.
There is no...
Ansett tried to buy Virgin Blue, now known as Virgin Australia, but Richard Branson refused this. Singapore Airlines also wanted to buy Ansett, but Air New Zealand blocked this, in addition to them blocking any form of investment as well. The New Zealand government bought 83% of the company, but the Australian government opted not to do the same for Ansett. The day after 9/11, Air New Zealand placed Ansett into voluntary administration. PricewaterhouseCoopers took the role of the administrator and said that Ansett was no longer viable to continue flying. Most employees of Ansett were unaware of this fact until they showed up for work. 16,000 employees were placed out of work and thousands of passengers were stranded. As you can imagine, many people were pissed. The now former Ansett employees took to the State Parliament of Victoria to protest on the 14th of September, the day the company's closure was formally announced. It took 10 years for former employees to get their entitlements, which is about $727.5 million. The administrator, Corder Mentha, seemed pleased with the results, and Mark Corder saying, "So we spent some time realising them in an orderly manner, and that's resulted in 96 cents in the dollar, so I think that's worked out well," Mr. Corder said. He also said that this final chapter does not ease the pain, but it helps bring closure. As for the assets, the HQ was sold to the PDG Corporation. Some planes found new owners. Singapore had actually leased 2 of their planes to Ansett and obtained them after the company's collapse, and later leased them to Fiji Airlines. Most of the other aircraft remained in storage until 2004, when they were sold off and brought to the US to be scrapped. Remains of two of the BAE 146s survived, and one was at Brisbane Airport as late as 2008, and another was at the Perth Airport. One Boeing 767-200 was not scrapped and was sold to the US and is in use as a charter aircraft. As it turns out, Ansett still lives on in name only. The founder's grandson created a flight school called Ansett Aviation. It is the only aviation-based business still run by a member of the Ansett family. It's based out of WA, Tasmania and Queensland. It exclusively trains helicopter pilots. In addition, this year it was revived as an AI-powered travel booking platform by Konstantin Franzeskos. Two subsidiary airlines owned by Ansett later combined to become Rex, a regional airline that itself was placed into voluntary administration last year. Australia has many defunct airlines, including ones that never took off. I bet you never heard of Australian National Airways. ANA was founded in the mid-1930s and previously had life as Flinders Island Airways, Tasmanian Aerial Services and Holyman's Airways. They began as services between Melbourne and Perth and gained an interest in Airlines of Australia, who had control of the airways of Queensland. ANA gained some competition when the Chifley government established TAA. Both airlines used Douglas DC-4s and eventually ANA got Douglas DC-6Bs to cover long distances. ANA also wanted to cover international travel, but that monopoly was held by Qantas. With it, there was this other airline called British Commonwealth Pacific Airlines, which was part owned by the Australian government. ANA did do the odd overseas contract flight. They also did migrant flights between Australia and Italy in the late 40s and flights over the Pacific. TAA was extraordinarily successful, so successful that ANA expected to be shut down after the 1949 election. But the government later passed a two-airline agreement in 1952 which would help maintain TAA and ANA. ANA's main man, Ivan Holyman, passed away in 1957, and the shareholders